Hi, and welcome to another 10-minute talk in the CM Murray series of 10-minute talks. I'm Emma Bartlett. I'm a partner here at CM Murray, and I'm joined today by my brilliant colleague and partner, Beth Hale. Hi, Beth.
Hi there.
Beth and I wanted to talk about sexual harassment in the healthcare sector and new GMC standards for doctors, which are coming in the near future. This was triggered by the explosive news report this week that a major analysis of NHS staff has found that female surgeons report being sexually assaulted whilst operating, sexually harassed and assaulted and raped by colleagues, which, to be honest, was significant enough. And then this was followed today, on the day that we're recording, by a consultant anaesthetist response to this report, which was published in the Times, calling young doctors a snowflake generation who do not comprehend that medical training and practice is brutal and demanding, meaning, in his opinion, that bullying happens, sexually inappropriate comments and actions do occur. And he went on to say that if they want to make a success of their career, then they should toughen up, which we found quite an extraordinary response. It's been described as healthcare's Me Too moment, and the issues in mind stem from a culture which is not fit for the modern workplace. The healthcare sector is not alone in being an industry in which its hierarchy was male-dominated. Incredibly stressful working environment, long hours, culture that's led to respectful values often being dropped, resulting in bullying and harassment. As well as more serious allegations of assault and sexual misconduct. And this type of culture may be being addressed through sweeping away the bad behaviours, emphasising and rewarding good behaviours, but taking seriously complaints whether current or historical, made by the employer to the employer, to the regulator. The allegations very much suggest the current healthcare culture is one of ship out or shut up. The reporting mechanics within the industry are not fit for purpose, perhaps, and result in a system that protects those in power. One commentator yesterday went further, suggesting that NHS trusts protect those bringing in the money, i.e. the renowned male surgeons who attract significant donations to that trust each year. And the victims end up being victimised and not supported for raising complaints. Further, women complainants fear loss of career, they suffer the trauma. If the complaints are to be believed, there's trauma there as well. And despite the assaults and misconduct being in front of witnesses, witnesses also fear what could happen to their career, so are being effectively silenced and not coming forward as witnesses, leaving people not wanting to put their head above the parapet. Further, it was suggested that women don't get believed, and that there's a societal preference to believe men, which is being underlined by the reporting structure. So all of this in the mix has led Beth and I to discuss this a little bit further.
I mean, there's a lot to unpick here, isn't there? I think it's so interesting. And obviously, we don't have time to deal with all the issues that come out of the reports that we've seen this week. But it'd be interesting to understand what is the regulator, who is the regulator for the medical professionals we're talking about, and what is happening, what is being done in relation to these kinds of issues, which, although they've been massively highlighted this week, were already on their radar, I think.
So the regulator is the General Medical Council, the GMC, who have got some guidance in place, something called the Good Medical Practice. But ironically, in August of this year, they published or they announced that there will be an update to the Good Medical Practice, which will come into effect at the end of January 2024. And in particular, it's issuing the GMC, through this publication, will be issuing the zero tolerance of sexual harassment standard. And the revised edition will include clear definitions of what constitutes sexual harassment and a clear expectation on doctors to act if they witnessed it. So the bystander obligation being imposed, which obviously we've seen in the legal sector, but very much being imposed on doctors who witness sexual harassment to do something about it and not just ignore it. It's the first major update to this publication in the last 10 years. The definitions of sexual harassment explicitly covering verbal and written comments, displaying and sharing images, physical contact as well. And doctors must not act in a sexual way towards colleagues with the effect or purpose of causing offence, embarrassment, humiliation or distress. And it does add to the existing guidance, which ironically just said that doctors must not act in a sexual way towards patients or use their professional position to pursue a sexual or improper emotional relationship. I wonder if it's just a cultural thing where they've suddenly had to read between the lines and say, oh, we only said don't do it in relation to patients, and we must be more clear that this obviously extends to your colleagues. I don't know, but it can't be a coincidence that there was this analysis of the trust and the GMC are saying, we're giving you 5 months to consider this before it comes into force in January 2024.
A lot of that guidance is reflective of the law, the underlying regulation on sexual harassment in the workplace. So it's, it sort of feels like about time that was also addressed by the regulator. Separately, or sort of alongside that, what are the government doing about this situation?
I mean, as you know, there's already protection under the Equality Act for individuals who suffer sexual harassment in the workplace. But in particular, there's a couple of private members' bills which are looking at future reform. The first being Worker Protection Amendment of the Equality Act 2022 to 23, which will introduce a duty on employers to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment of employees, and this will impose a mandatory obligation on employers to take reasonable steps. The Act will also, when it comes into force, give employment tribunals power to uplift sexual harassment where it is well-founded and sustained in the employment tribunal compensation by up to 25%. This was quite controversial earlier in the year. I think in July, the government dropped an additional clause in it where they were going to add specific liability for employers on third-party harassment.
That would have included, presumably, employer liability for harassment, for example, by patients. And that has been dropped from the bill, hasn't it? I think it's been republished, in fact, today, republished, without that third-party harassment protection in there.
I mean, on the basis that there is existing law already under which individuals can pursue third-party harassment in the workplace.
So there isn't really.
No, it's more complicated. It would have been better to have addressed it in the bill. Anyway, but this is it shows this is firmly the specific obligation on employers to take reasonable steps to protect, prevent sexual harassment of their employees. Shows that it's very much on the government's agenda. And then secondly, there's another protection from sex-based harassment in public bill, which is currently going through Parliament at the moment to introduce a new criminal offence of intentional harassment, alarm or distress carried out because of a person's sex or presumed sex. And this will really bolster the existing legislation on, at the moment, obviously there are provisions under the Equality Act, but there's also the Protection from Harassment Act 1997 that this is intended to provide a specific criminal offence, which is going to amend the Public Order Act 1986. So it clearly shows there's still a ministerial campaign here. The one last thing I would note is that the proposal to ban workplace non-disclosure agreements, so confidentiality provisions, ministers are still trying to seek those to be banned more widely in the workplace. There was a successful ban on them in educational settings, and it's still something which is being debated, and I think that one will really continue to be debated for a long time.
And actually, just a little plug, we've got a couple of 10-minute talks on our website around NDAs and how that kind of how those play out in practice, and the sort of guidance on it, particularly for lawyers drafting NDAs. But I think that it's a pretty fraught issue, I think, isn't it?
I mean, it specifically in relation to the topic that we're discussing at the moment with regards to sexual harassment in the healthcare sector, and specifically of female surgeons. One of the things that's cropped up in the headlines is the fact that there seems to be protection being given to the alleged male surgeons and not to the people who are calling out. So I just wanted to ask what protection there is for whistleblowers, which effectively either the bystanders or the female surgeons might be.
Absolutely, and there is protection for whistleblowers under the UK legislation. If someone makes what's called a protected disclosure, and that means a disclosure of information which tends to suggest that there has been some kind of unlawful activity. That's a very broad brush explanation of what protected disclosure is. So, but if they make a protected disclosure, then they are protected against detriment and dismissal because of having made that disclosure. But there are various problems with that in practice, not least that the way in which the protections vary depending on the sort of how you obtain protection varies depending on who you make the report, who you make the disclosure to. And I think particularly in the healthcare sector, there is an issue around who is actually someone's employer, so that what the protection is in practice. Is the employer the NHS? Is the employer a particular trust? And how that plays out in practice can be really complicated, particularly in the healthcare sector. It's also worth noting that yes, while there is this protection, the way of enforcing that protection is broadly, other than in some very limited circumstances, is broadly through bringing a lengthy claim in the employment tribunal, which takes a long time, is expensive, is stressful, is difficult. Evidence is difficult, proving that is the reason for your treatment is difficult. So it puts people in a very difficult position and has a long-lasting impact on their mental well-being, I think, and also on, it's expensive, and also on their reputation. And I think that's what people are really concerned about, is that they won't, whatever the law might say, there will be a very real impact on their reputation, and that can be lasting and really, really damaging. So I think that is what often holds people back from disclosing these kinds of things, even when they may be aware that they, in theory, have this sort of legal protection.
So so the point that a complainant comes forward, what sort of support would you expect a complainant to need, and the witnesses that are supporting them and helping to report bullying, harassment or sexual misconduct?
What I would always say in respect of encouraging people to speak up is just stress the importance of leading from the top, of creating a culture which encourages people to speak up, of having leaders talk about their experiences, having leaders talk about speaking up about misbehavior, about speaking up about issues, encouraging people to come forward, having very clear reporting lines so that people know where to go to report this kind of behavior, know who to speak to, and that and clear reporting lines, but a range of reporting lines as well, so that people have a choice, and that it is made absolutely clear that people will not suffer any detriment as a result of speaking up about issues if that's done in good faith, and that they really, that message is delivered and played out in practice from the very top of an organisation, and that has to come right from the top of all trusts, all NHS trusts, and from the top of the organisation itself. When someone does make a report, they should be offered support. They should be offered. It should, I think, that the first assumption should be that they are telling the truth. And you should, and then appropriate investigations to be put in place. Those should happen quickly, so that people aren't sort of don't have this cloud hanging over them for a long time. And that is often an issue, is that investigations take a really long time. And support should be offered to everybody involved, and that includes witnesses who may have spoken up, or who may have not spoken up but have been impacted by witnessing behaviour. It also includes people against whom allegations are made. Having allegations made against you can be incredibly stressful and incredibly traumatic, and whatever someone may have done, they should still be offered proper support, and including counselling, and that applies to everybody involved. So the complainant, the alleged perpetrator, the witnesses should be offered proper mental health support, proper support in continuing with their work.
That's brilliant, thank you. A great summary. Having sort of represented senior executives within the medical profession who are either raising really sensitive grievances, or representing those who are on the receiving end of being accused of many things which are offensive to those, being believed is is really important. Being heard is really important, but then being treated as an individual as well. I'm hoping that now that this is being put, it's not the first time this year we've heard about sexual harassment within the healthcare sector this year, is it? But now with the regulator taking it seriously, I would hope that there's going to be a sea change, as it were, as to how this is going to be perceived in the workplace, and that people won't immediately come up against it. I think you must have misunderstood something, or are you sure you want to proceed with this? It's got to be taken seriously, hasn't it?
And I think there are lots of other reasons that we've seen this year. I mean, we're not here to discuss this case, but the Lucy Letby case just showed as well how important it is to listen to people who speak up about concerns they have in the workplace. And I think it's absolutely vital that this is happening, and this is, as I say, sort of being led from the top of an organisation to show that you can speak up when you have concerns, and you will be believed, and your concerns will be investigated.
For people who are on the receiving end of them, they equally don't want these types of allegations brushed under the carpet. They need to be investigated to understand what's happened in order for people to move forward as well.
Absolutely, so important. And I think that leadership from the front, from the top of an organisation, would be my kind of overriding message on all of this.
Well, thank you very much, Beth. It's only a 10-minute talk. I'm sure we could carry on talking about it all day, but for more resources and information and podcasts, please do go to our website, cm-murray.com. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to this as much as we've enjoyed talking about it. Many thanks.